the one we are going to use for the AFCON, as well as the year thereafter.
With less than 3 years to the 2027 African Cup of Nations, to be co-hosted by Kenya and her neighbors Tanzania and Uganda, it has been a rush against time to prepare Kenya's national team Harambee Stars, as well as the infrastructural and logistical structures ahead of the major tournament.
The CS.
On Wednesday, September 25th, 2024, the Cabinet Secretary for Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports, Honorable Kipchumba Murkomen, was before the National Assembly to respond to questions from the floor of the House regarding the tournament and other matters.
So far as preparation of Africa Cup of Nations and the African Championship, Mr. Speaker, there are three very important pieces of infrastructure, starting with a new stadium that is being constructed at Jamhuri along Ngong Road in Nairobi, which is Talanta Sports City. This stadium, Mr. Speaker, shall have a seating capacity of 60,000 and is expected to be completed December 2025.
The MPs also sought to know about the state of the country's preparedness in infrastructure ahead of the African Nations Championship CHAN of 2026.
I was privileged to host the CAF president who visited the country to assess Kenya preparedness to host the CHAN and Africa Cup of Nations 2027. And I'm glad to inform you that the CAF president expressed satisfaction with the progress we have made thus far.
My concern, CS, is once you hand over this stadia to the county governments, the government of Kenya has invested billions in some of these stadia, and I have the case in mind of Kirigiti Stadium. What measures is your ministry taking to ensure that those stadia will not be run down out of poor management by the county governments?
So far, Homa Bay County is doing very well with their stadium, which they built themselves, and it's, Mr. Speaker, fairly being well maintained. The MOU we are going to sign, that's why Wangoru has not been handed over, is because that MOU must capture all those issues, considering the investment that has been done by national government. That is the most important thing we are going to have with that MOU. And as I said, Mr. Speaker, that's why it is nice progressively that these stadia are owned by private entities so that they do not have consideration of this type of issues.
Questions also being raised from the floor regarding measures the ministry had put in place to ensure timely preparation, coordination, management and facilitation of teams picked to represent the country in various other disciplines.
The other day we had the beach kabaddi team that was going for World Cup that got really delayed in terms of their travel, and one of the complaints that came out from them was that on the day that they were actually traveling for World Cup is the same day that it was beginning. Why weren't they given priority?
We had requested them that they travel at least 2 days before to have time to recover and then to play, and so that we can save the costs. We communicated that to their federations and they were well aware, but you know, sometimes when people want just to raise their voice a little bit, they do certain things that may not be desirable. And the federation said that they did not instruct their players to do what they did.
Up, up, up. Let's go!
Questions relating to the milestones made by Kenya Academy of Sports in development of grassroots talent, the challenges faced and measures taken to address those challenges also emerged.
We have had this concern in the sports committee. Kenya Academy of Sports received zero allocation in this financial year against our recommendations. And ADAC, which is the vanguard of the integrity of our athleticism as a country, also just got 20%, barely enough to cover the admin costs. So I would like to hear from the minister that there are no proposals to wind up these two institutions.
In terms of development, and unfortunately also Sportspan cannot pay for salaries and emoluments for it is not allowed to be used to pay for salary and emoluments of agencies. So we are now in a situation where we ask ourselves why you could have an agency having zero. I plead on behalf of these agencies that we get your support. We have already had this conversation with Treasury, and I believe that when the proposal comes here for supplementary, this will be restored.
I want to raise the case of Claire Mary Paul, who was identified and spent 4 months, and she's a Form 4 student. And then after she was identified, she was dropped. When they were about to go, and new people picked. Mr. Speaker, I'm saying as a child rights advocate, because you may have actually destroyed somebody's life permanently, while you are saying that you are actually trying to nurture sports. Is it not then self-defeating? If you are wondering why we only have rugby that is doing well, if we can actually identify young people and destroy their futures by creating hope and dashing those hopes.
Unfortunately, in the sports sector, you can be doing very well today. And when final selection for a tournament is done, you may not meet the cut. Three of our girls participated and helped the team to qualify. But by the time, that was a year ago, by the time the selection was being done and there were 35 in camp and about 14 were dropped, Mr. Speaker, Claire Maris became a victim of that process. And not a victim because the coach is biased. She was just selecting her team, the best team that can compete.
So many Kenyans were winning gold during the Olympics. But those Kenyans, you see, this name is Keter or Kipchumba, and then all of a sudden you realize this person is a Canadian. What is happening that the best athletes are running for other countries and not Kenya? Thank you.
Those athletes are not running for those countries because we were unable to give them an opportunity to run. It's, Mr. Speaker, also out of choice. Wilson Kipketer left this country a long time ago, 1990s, early 90s, to go and run for Denmark, as of choice. Bernard Kiplagat was doing so well in 1500 and 5000, and as of choice, he went to run for United States of America.
Cherono.
Stephen Cherono went to run for Qatar. Mr. Speaker.
But Minister,
the
revelation by Yavi on
Yes.
why she ended up running for another sovereign is something you must address.
Mr.
Those
Speaker,
who go voluntarily to take citizenship of another country, we have no issues.
Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, Yavi, in her own words, say that the competition in Kenya was too hard for her. She could not make the cut in the country. That is why she chose to run for another country.
Is the ministry aware that there are office bearers of FKF who are insisting that they shall go into the election beyond their constitutional timelines, beyond their constitutional tenures, arguing that their tenures were interrupted by the COVID pandemic?
No one will run for the same office more than 2 terms under the Sports Act. And that is very clear. And I believe that the officials of FKF who are holding office now, if they want to run for office, maybe to run for a different office other than the one they have served for more than 2 terms, so that we can keep within our legal standards, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
We were a better footballing nation 20 years ago than we are today because of sheer mismanagement of football in the country.
I have made it clear.
And when we were vetting you, you gave us that assurance. Can you assure this House and the country
Mr. Speaker,
that you are going to sort out the mess in football and take back Kenya to its level as a footballing nation?
Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Sports operates, especially for sports, through the federations. So sorting football is sorting the federation. And the election process that we are undertaking, Mr. Speaker, we want to be as transparent as possible to make sure that those who come in will make sure that they follow the narrow path, Mr. Speaker, to make sure that our football is managed well.